Margaret was born September 17th, 1964, to my very loving parents, Kitty and Dick Champlin. I was not excited to have a baby sister at all. I supposedly went into the nursery with a purple crayon and colored all over the walls of her nursery. So I guess we didn't get off to the greatest start. Margaret was the cutest little girl you've ever seen. Big blue eyes, curly hair and pigtails. She was the apple of her dad's eye. He used to call her Baby Thud because she fell down so much. 6 years later, our brother Chris was born. We all lived a very happy, lucky life surrounded by loving parents, grandparents, and many cousins. Family vacations, holiday gatherings, it was all a really great life. Margaret and I used to share a room from pretty much when she was old enough to get out of a crib to move into a bed. We had twin beds in a room right next to my parents' room. And we used to stay up at night and giggle in our beds and talk and tell stories. And the stories got weirder, of course, as we got older. But it was such a special time for us to be together and to be so close. Margaret was a lot more organized than I was. She would lay out her clothes for the next day to go to school, and then I would come in the next morning and put her outfit on and go to school in them. And so that always caused problems, made her really mad, and it was pretty mean of me to do. Margaret was always creative. Margaret had all of these dolls that led very elaborate lives, very creative lives, and they all had very weird haircuts. I think that was the precursor to her going to hair school and eventually working for Fidel Sassoon in San Francisco. She started guitar and piano lessons in grade school, and of course she was great right from the beginning. As we got older, Margaret started following her own path. She had a loyal group of lovely, wild friends. Wherever the girls went, trouble followed them. One day my dad was sitting in his office at 63rd and Hefner Parkway, looking out the window, and he sees a couple of hippie girls with a guitar hitchhiking down the street. So he looks again, and the hippie girls are Margaret and I think Julianne. So Dad gets in his car, pulls around, picks them up hitchhiking. They are horrified that it's Dad. Dad is furious, and they were in big trouble.
Well, as the youngest child, and her being my older sister, there was little that I could do wrong. Margaret kind of set the path that made at least me not getting in trouble pretty easy in life. But overall, I always looked at her as my idol. When she was singing in rock bands, I always had street cred when I would go out on the town. Even when I was underage, people would know me as Margie's little brother, and the velvet rope would just raise right up and I could go right into any venue, and all my friends would be like, dude, how'd you get in? I was like, just my cool sister.
Yeah, Margaret played guitar. She sang backup. She had the high, I think she was pretty high soprano voice in the band, as I remember. It just like came out like, oh my God, really? It's coming out of you? All the girls had really good harmony together. Kate played guitar as well. She played the rock, lead guitar. Millie sang and Chris was on bass. But it was a good lineup.
Living out some travesty, it's all that's left for me. Sight unseen, sight unseen.
During the time our music came out, it was probably right when Hole and a bunch of other girl bands were coming out. I think it was perfect timing for us to launch the band. I think Kate was in contact with the attorneys for Nirvana and their music people, and they were listening to all the Jubilee music and really liked it. And we were going back and forth with them, and that's kind of when the band fell apart. Unfortunately, I think everybody was just like, just ready to go. And that was kind of disappointing for everyone, but at least everyone loved the music, you know.
We played around Oklahoma City for a while, and for about a year, really mostly a summer, and then we decided to move with a lot of our friends. We had a whole group of people that moved to San Francisco, where we played rock and roll music.
Millie, Kate, Margaret. Then there were two guys, Dale and Derek, Margaret's boyfriend Van, me, Holly. They were gonna move, and they said, do you wanna come? We have this house. Kate had already found a house with like 5 bedrooms.
When they were all moving there, they each could take 3 things. And so Carrie took a TV, and Margaret took a stereo, and Derek took 3 doors. He said you could just never know when you might need a door.
She rented the U-Haul trailer. Derek and Dale built these plywood sides that said San Francisco or bust. I mean, we looked like the grapes of wrath.
We found some success in San Francisco, and we moved to Los Angeles. And we had signed a demo deal with Geffen Records, and that fell through, and we disbanded and went our own ways for a while, and found ourselves back in Oklahoma City and reformed. And like a lot of stories, rock and roll stories, things didn't quite work out for us, and we moved on.
Margaret has had 2 dogs, Enid, otherwise known as Eenie, and Ace Boogie, known as Boogie. Both of these dogs held a very honored role in Margaret's life. I would say it went past love into obsession.
If you knew Margaret, you knew that she loved animals. The dogs were her life. And it didn't take me very long, once I met her, to realize that she was the true matriarch of the dogs at the Belle Isle area. She was an expert Frisbee thrower. And Boogie, her dog, could only, he could catch anything she could throw. When Margaret would get tired of throwing, and Boogie would bring the Frisbee to me, I would attempt to throw it and didn't do a very good job. When it was thrown, Boogie would go get it, but he'd bring it back and take it to Margaret again. She's very smart and she's very kind, but she's kind-hearted. She attracted all the people that were there. I mean, she knew all the people and knew the dog's name, and she would love all of them.
Well, the people at the dog park were a really big part of her life. When they shut down the playground, Margaret was absolutely livid. I mean, I'd never seen her be so mad about something before. She was like organizing people and writing letters, and she really became active in trying to get that playground reopened.
Margaret and I, and many of our other friends, went to Crested Butte, Colorado often, at least once a year. Margaret and I shared a birthday week together. Mine was September 12th and hers was the 17th of September. So we would always try to plan our trip to Colorado then, because the wildflowers were starting to bloom, and it started getting cooler, and you could see the aspens changing. Included in those vacations were Millie and Julianne and Carrie, of course, and always Boogie. He was with us every single time, even though he wasn't really supposed to. My mom, after he had made a big mess one time, was like, no more Boogie. And so we would sneak him. And, we had so much fun, and we had favorite restaurants, and she had favorite places she wanted to go, and we would try to mix it up every single time. There was no set itinerary. And she always wanted to offer to drive, but then I'd look over and she'd be asleep. Nothing was more fun than being in the mountains with those girls.
Margaret loved Tom and my son Cameron so much. He was the first grandbaby in our family. Margaret was there when he was born, and she was so proud. And Cameron inherited some of her smart aleckness for sure. He also has that sharp wit. And he and the other niece and nephew, Kendall and Max, they all worshiped her. She just was so funny and so snide and so sneaky. And they all, you know, she was like the bad aunt, but the best aunt you could have, really.
When she moved back from Austin here and got sober, I had just had a baby a couple years before, my first and only baby. And she really wanted to be a part of Elaine's life, and my daughter fell in love with her, as kids do. You know, Margaret was still such a sweetheart, but she was a smart ass to Elaine. And Elaine loved it. And they would make fun of me together, and I loved that. I loved their relationship.
And I met Margaret on the bench in front of the Western Club. And that's where we snuck away, yes, to smoke. That was the beginning of my experience in AA. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I loved her. I loved her with all my heart. She had a wonderful sense of humor. What she was so good at was making everyone feel good, about making everyone feel welcome, about making comfort, because we all loved her.
It took place about 10 years ago. To set the stage, we're in Jackson Hole, really nice place, Jenny Lake Lodge, having dinner. And after dinner, we'd always like to go out and ride bikes afterwards. And as we were talking about that, Margaret kind of had a sad look on her face. And we were like, "What's wrong, Margie?" And she's like, "I never learned how to ride a bike." And though some of the facts of that are disputed on whether she learned how to ride a bike, she'd forgotten how to ride a bike. And so I, as a father who just taught my two kids to ride a bike, quickly went out and we got Margaret on a bike. And I was running behind her, just like you do with your kids, pedal, 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 pedal. We did it a couple times with me holding on to her, and then it was time to let her go and be free. So I ran behind her, we're running, she's got a hold of things, she's kind of wobbly, I let her go, and she sets off down the road. And it's just an open road, and there's only one tree on the side of the road. And Margaret just continued to pedal, 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 and eventually just ran right into the tree and fell, skinned up her knee, and then had this huge black eye for the entire part of the vacation. And Papa and Kiki, as we refer to my parents, were just so mad at me the whole time for giving my sister a black eye, but she was cool with it. It was an experience that both her and I loved, and I was so fortunate to be able to teach my sister how to ride a bike at the age of 50.
Every Sunday or Saturday for the last 5 years, Elaine and I would go over to Kitty's and swim with Margaret and Kitty, and Kim, and Janie, and Tom was there sometimes. And when Chris and his family would come, it was such a fun time. It was the kind of impact on a family that was so relaxed. It wasn't, you have to come, you have to be a certain way. It was so fun. I loved it so much. And my daughter, Elaine, she loved Kitty so much. She said, "I want to be like Kitty when I grow up." And I said, "Well, we all do. I want to be like Kitty too." When Kitty died, my daughter, Elaine, knew that we needed to help Margaret more.
My mom was Margaret's everything. She was Margaret's confidant. They were so close. Mom cared for her. Mom prepared her entire life to take care of Margaret. And when we lost Mom in May, I knew she wouldn't last that much longer without her. My mother, she was the greatest mom, and Margaret just loved her more than anything else in the entire world.
Every week we went to wound care, but I got to see how Margaret is with all these caregivers, all these nurses adored her. She adored them. They had these relationships that it was just so great. It was so great to see Margaret's impact in the rest of the world. And then the last few weeks of her life, I got to see who and how she was, just inside, underneath, no drugs, no nothing, no bullshit, you know. It was just pure sweetness. It was pure sweetness.
And our family was so lucky to have 5 or 6 days with Margaret. Everybody was here from out of town. Chris, Jill, Kendall, Max, Cameron, Amanda, Tom, and her best friend and honorary mother, Barbara Cook from Los Angeles. We all spent time with Margaret. She told us stories. She told us so many stories, and some of them were hilarious, and some of them were heartbreaking. But she really was telling us who she was that last week, and who she was the most special person in the world. And we were so lucky to see that and have that, and for her to have that too during those last few days.
So what advice would I give Margaret in heaven? It would be just go ride that bike, get pets, and let Kiki introduce you to all her cool friends that she's made, and just leave all the bad things behind and just do all the good things in the future.
It's been a while since we've played music together, but we just stayed friends and spent at least some parts of every year together. I really lived for cracking Margaret up. It brought me such joy, and I'm really gonna miss laughing with her. She absolutely is one of the funniest people on this earth, and I just adore her.
And she was always good, and she did the best and the nicest things for every person that knew her, and she did it without struggle, it seemed. She was just the most caring, giving girl, even if she didn't think she was or didn't even want to be sometimes. So
Margaret was always Margie in the middle. I mean, she was that classic middle child. I was the bossy older sister. My little brother Chris was kind of the golden child, and there was always Margie in the middle. And I think she always kind of felt that way. And when you read about the roles of children and their order in families, she really fit that to a T. But she was a rebel, and she was a rebel from early on. She didn't want to be like everybody else. She tried to not be like everyone else. She tried to be cool, but she didn't have to try to be cool. She was the coolest girl I've ever known, and I will always remember her that way.